Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you. So good to be here this evening. We're coming to you live from the Cactus Creek. Show some love. Oh my God. Charlie, when you're talking to a Ghanaian, he says, hey, Charlie, 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 Charlie. When you hear Charlie like more than 3 times, Asamoah, eh? Hey, Charlie, 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 Charlie. Stop, 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 stop. Why am I saying this? Tonight, my guest, Charlie, 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 Charlie. No, my guest this evening, I am so excited about. I think I first spoke to him some years back, but it's here tonight. And let me tell you, this guy, by all standards, is a world-class legal brain, man. Show some love, man. Woo! Man! It's funny, I was talking to some of his people who know him, just to give me some few ideas what they think about this gentleman. They're okay, Wabio. That's all I heard. But I also know some stories of this man. And I usually don't do this. I never tell the story before they come on. But this story I must tell you before he comes on. When I finish the story, I will introduce him. I'm sure you know already, but I'm in found. Check this out. You know, this man, legal brain of the highest order. At one point, you know, we were calling him the financial wizard and all. Do you remember? Yeah, then show some love, man. Yeah, it's very interesting, you know, because you see this man, you know him to be this brilliant brain, and then you go behind the man and you realize, Charlie, this man, Charlie, when it comes to being down to earth, you know Fitamo. Let me tell you a story, man, and this is a secret. He doesn't know I know this, but I'm telling the story, and when it comes, I'll ask him. There was this time that this man, Charlie, Ghana for Kwamkase, he was rapping this beautiful lady, and I caught, you know, the priest caught him, but I rapping, you know, and the lady had a complaint. Say, actually, this man, I don't sort of see the romance. We don't go out, we don't date, Papa Bia, and was always complaining. And then one time the man said, listen, today we are going out on a date. Show some love, man. Yeah, today we are going out for a date. And guess where he took her? Osu Night Market. I kid you not. I didn't get up. They went to Osu Night Market to go and hang out. Can you see two sitting at Osu Night Market, you know, having their kenke and fish and talking deep intellectual stuff, man. Oh, man. Now you've heard enough from me. I'm going to introduce this man. Put your hands together like you've never done before. Show some love for my good friend, Tsatsu Chikata. Please. Show some love one more time. Tsatsu, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. You've been talking to some dangerous people.
Not quite dangerous.
I can feel that. And you've been hearing some secrets.
You hear some secrets. When I come back, I want to ask you a secret. But now that we're here, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, folks, you know, this show is called Let's Chat with Tsatsu. That's the name of this show. Let's Chat with Tsatsu. When we come back, I'll tell you why we have that title. So stick around. When we come back from this break, what will we do? We'll be chatting with Tsatsu. Stick around, we'll be right back.
The KSM Show.
Hey, Bukuya. The thing on the pressure to Mrs. Sa, what tongue come from? You said the people na ya na fa Yaruko. They said when you Joe what to ha wu soon.
My nose anka between me kaba.
Ma.
We yari the menya no dru and nti na ma me tongue craft for brano.
Any baby say fin ya go. Kwese wa mama ye machine.
Ko fitira. Wa yase na ya na ye wo yam. And na se wo kunu so ba wo na wo dwane dwane. And
and there I see Do you know that in Ghana, an average 70 cars are snatched every quarter?
Hello, babe. What? Your car snatched? Don't worry, Jetty K GPS got us covered.
Vehicle GPS tracker technology can provide information on the exact location of your vehicle at all times on your phone. Count on Jatike for all your security needs: CCTV, biometric attendance and access control, home and vehicle alarms, electric fence. Talk to us on 0244 211 691 or 0208 800 115. Jatike Security. Be security smart.
Located in the calm green hills of Ibury is Ghana's best kept secret. Cactus Creek, a peaceful haven on the mountain, your home in Ibury. Plush rooms, amazing landscapes, sizzling dishes, indoor and outdoor entertainment. Looking for the ultimate serenity? Don't look any further. Call Cactus Creek on 0550 395 007 or 0507 338 158. The best decision you'll ever make. Welcome home.
The KSM Show.
We're back, and as I said before the commercial break, this is called Chat with Tsatsu. And first of all, before I start, let me thank Amma Pratt, because this is a slot, but we had such a hot guest, Charlie. When I told Amma, I said, oh, you can have my spot to do your KSM special. So Amma, thank you so much for, show some love for Amma, man. Show some love for Amma. So we're back, and we are calling the show Let's Chat with Tsatsu. Do you know why? Because I promised him to come back. This show, we are going to see the man Tsatsu. We are going up close and personal with my good brother here. And you all know that the verdict is coming out soon, I think in a few days' time. After the verdict, he has promised to come back. And yes, and you know the name of that show? It won't be Chat with Tsatsu. It will be Tsatsu in the witness box. Tsatsu in the box, man. I will be cross-examining him, but that's part 2 of the show. This one, let's Tsatsu. Tsatsu must send one. Welcome to the show, man. Just some love for him one more time.
Tsatsu, by the way, what a wonderful setting you have for this show.
Thank you.
I feel at ease. It's a haven, and I'll be back.
You'll be back. Put your hands in your hands. Oh, that is fantastic. Well, welcome to the show, and I'm sure you heard my introduction. And before I start anything, I'm not going to say, Christian, you're crazy. You have Tsatsu on the set. You won't ask him solid, heavy intense. You're going to ask him about Osu Market, but that's something. This night market story that I heard, is it true?
But that's the reality of the life of a bachelor boy. Osu Night Market is actually a very important location for ensuring one's, well-being.
Oh, wow.
I used to go to Osu Night Market. In fact, I have a favorite kenke seller in the Osu Night Market who I go to regularly. And she has fantastic fish as well. Her fish is really...
So there's a specific seller that you go to?
I'm telling you. And so naturally, and I don't know why you're getting into my very personal life just because we're up close and personal. But it is a fact that in order to impress some people, I have taken them along to go and see this wonderful kenke and fish person
At the night market.
at the Osu night market. But what is even more amazing about it, and I think in the end, this is what saved the situation for me. Apart from the wonders of her food, I got to find out that this lady, through her night market work, had educated her daughter. And one day when I went there, she actually introduced her daughter to me and said, she's in Legon, you know. And maybe by now she's even a lawyer.
Really?
And she may well be the next Supreme Court Justice. but truly, I mean, I've always found Osu Night Market a very refreshing spot for meeting my culinary expectations. So I try to impress some people also by taking them there. But let's not get too much into that.
Is she still around? I'm wondering.
You know, unfortunately, I've lost track a little bit because these days, not just because of Corona and so on, but being no longer a bachelor boy,
Yes.
I now have home cooked food.
Yes.
And frankly, even when I was in prison, I was getting home cooked food every single day because my wife that I have to eat home cooked food. Even in prison.
I will be getting to that. We'll be getting to that, man. Shut up, man. When I heard the night market story, I was like, so, I don't know. Blown up. Hey.
Actually, it's not only Osuna. I used to go to Achimota as well. Achimota,
really? The night market.
There's also a night market there where the kenke is
very
good.
You like kenke pie?
Well, if I don't have akpla and fetridachi, then kenke is a good enough substitute.
Understandable. So is that Osuna market or Achimota night market?
I think Osu is my favorite, to be honest. Osu is my favorite.
Wow.
And,
Osuna market, Charlie, you kind of, because long ago, back in the day, it was my joint too, man.
There you go. But you didn't confess that earlier.
But I didn't go to the kenke stand though. You know where I went?
No.
Domedo.
Oh, okay. That's on the right hand side.
Oh, you know that. Oh, wow. That is great, man. But honestly, it's very interesting, because when people are in the limelight like you and, it's hard to imagine them again as people who do what normal people do, So, in fact, when I heard that Osuna Market was your hang-up, it was refreshing to know. But now you eat at home.
Yes,
good for you. Tsatsu, welcome again.
Thank
you. We say let's chat with Tsatsu. We are just shooting the breeze. There's so much we can say about you and so much we can talk about. So let's just go, man.
I started off by acknowledging the beauty of your surroundings and so on, and I think that is very important, for me, because one has to acknowledge, what God has put us in, the setting that God has put us in. And I find that I really am excited every time it's like David in, Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, and he always has to give an acknowledgement to God in terms of when he sits or when he meditates or on his surroundings and so on. So I'm feeling quite excited not just to be here, but I'm also feeling quite excited to be able just to chat, as you said, in a kind of normal way. Maybe people are too used to seeing me sort of in my wig and gown and all that sort of stuff, Or some people have even been used to seeing me just in a lecture room, in the past and so on. But, I'm kind of normal.
Tsatsu without the wig and gown, man. This is Tsatsu, bare Tsatsu. I'm stripping naked. This is Tsatsu stripped. That'd be a nice headline.
That's a nice headline.
But let's go back a little bit, Tsatsu, because from little readings I've done, I hear you're like whiz kid in primary school? Where do you go?
You know, I started off in Mrs. Sam's. Mrs. Sam's was like a nursery, well, not nursery, but it was an early school kind of context in which, you know, I started off. I've even forgotten one important thing. Before I went to Mrs. Sam's, there was Aditrom. Aditrom was a real nursery school. And once my older brother started going to school, I would follow him to school. Sometimes, you know, just insisting.
Just go and sit in class with him.
Exactly.
I'm going with my older brother.
Exactly. And so that's how I really started. But Mrs. Sam's was where we all really started, you know, proper school, as it were. And, you know, it was an interesting place. But very quickly, we moved to Accra Newtown Experimental School. And that's where we had a wonderful headmaster, Mr. Fosu Apia. I mean, you know, he spoke so well. And I remember all that from those early years because I think that was part of what really impressed me. We had a headmaster who you could see as a model, you know, the way he spoke, his stature, his bearing. And I remember he had his own children in the school. But unfortunately for those children, he was so hard on them.
Really?
In order to make the point to us, the rest of us, like, we better take.
I do this to my children.
What about you all? So it was a good discipline, you know, proper Equiapim Presbyterian discipline, you know.
I can imagine.
And so that was Accra Newtown Experimental School, and that was very formative for me because I made a lot of, you know, friends, a lot of, you know, people with whom I've grown up into Infantsipim. And
this is what I find interesting right here. As a kid entering school at that level, some of the things that impress you will probably be the Kenke Sela. You know, I mean, they're really basic things. But you, at that time, was looking at this headmaster, and that was sort of...
No, that really, it was unforgettable for me because I've had, in my experience of school, headmasters who made that impression, like Infantsipim, you know, F.L. Bartels, you know, that kind of stature, the way they spoke and so on. And indeed, from that early age, I was struck. He spoke excellent English.
Wow.
And Accra Newtown Experimental was one of these experimental schools where you were not allowed to speak local languages, you know, because we wanted to bring all the English in us, you know. And I think it was just because, you know, a lot of the work that was done in the educational system was in English anyway. So I think people wanted to ensure that there was a good grounding in English. And so having a headmaster like that, and then there were excellent teachers, by the way, that I also remember from those days. In class 6, we had a fantastic teacher. She had been a student in Wesley Girls. I mean, where else? And I think it was soon after Wesley Girls that she came to teach us in class 6, just when we were going to take common entrance. That was the thing about experimental school. You took common entrance in class 6.
Yeah. Before we get there, let me quickly ask this. Because I hear in your primary school you were like, every year they promoted you like 2 classes ahead of your class.
Well,
you started class 1, then you come back.
No. I think actually it was really one major promotion. From class 3, I was jumped to class 4. Okay. So then I joined, you know, my older brother and other people from class 4. And then class 4, we went on to class 5 and 6, where we took common entrance. That was the whole. So instead of 6 years, which was what the rest of the, I did 5 years.
You did 5
for that experimental project.
But you did a common entrance as 9. You were 9 years old.
I did common entrance. Actually, I was 8 at the time. I turned 9 before I went to Infantsipim. But when I did common entrance, I was actually 8 years old. And you know, I think that recently one of my contemporaries told me a story which I had long forgotten. The people in Infantsipim, after they had marked our papers and so on, they invite us for interviews. So we were all invited for interviews at Row Road. In those days, they used to call it Row Road School, Kimbu School. And we all were there for interviews. Then, in the case of Fui and myself, they actually asked us to do a written exam again, because apparently they didn't believe that we had been the people who had taken those written exams and so on.
Scored that.
So,
it was that impressive.
they actually had us sit down
And write.
and do written exams again before the oral interviews. And I had forgotten this until one of my contemporaries reminded me that you people, the rest of us, were doing oral interviews. They sat you to write your exam again. So indeed, we wrote again, and so I guess they were satisfied that we were the people who had done the
Now that they have the evidence.
They have the evidence. Yes, and so that's how. So I got in fan swim in January 1960.
And you were 9 years old.
Yes, I turned 9 in October.
Okay.
And so January I was in infant swim, little boy. And the beauty of being that little is that everybody protects you and takes care of you. So none of this bullying stuff, that they do on other people.
So there's a lot of bullying, but
a lot of bullying, but
you're so small.
They didn't touch me.
This guy,
all the
protection.
seniors, And the other aspect of it was that in those days, I was quite asthmatic, and I still am asthmatic. But in those days, one of the asthma medications was asthma cigarettes. Asthma cigarettes which you inhale, and that sort of helps clear, the system for asthma.
Really?
So I became a favorite, even to some of the bad boys in school, because they saw that I was the only person who was allowed to smoke officially. So occasionally they would come for a stick of my asthma cigarette, in the hope that if they are caught smoking, they will say that I'm also smoking asthma cigarettes, and just like Tsatsu is allowed, me too.
So you liked it and all, and it's actual smoke?
Yes, actual smoke.
Really?
And I was the only person that had authorization to smoke in school.
You became their friends.
I became their friend. Absolutely. They needed my asthma cigarettes to show that they also had asthma. But it was a fantastic situation for me, because I was mentored by, older people. I mean, there's seniors that I remember who took care not only of me in terms of my health situation, but were interested in my development.
In a way, I guess they were impressed too, that such a small, tiny little person. What was the age group, the average age group of the...
about 12.
About 12,
yeah. My mates tended to be about 12. Some were even a little older.
Yeah.
But about 12. But I was 9. Fui was 11. So, he too was
So you're this cute little boy that everybody wanted to take care of. And that saved you from the bullies.
It saved me.
Plus your
my asthma cigarettes also. And I mean, the thing that I was pointing out about being mentored, we had, prefects in my house then. I was in Bama House. I mean, prefects like Joyata, Kobe Hunter, and people. I mean, they were concerned that this little boy should really begin to develop the capabilities that he was at Infant Spring School for. Because, I mean, they knew that, that's the school. I mean, it's not a village, it's a school.
It's the school.
And so they really wanted me to fit in very well, not to be, bothered and, affected by my health situation and so on. And I remember, I mean, sometimes when I really had to get to hospital, I had to get some attention because of asthma, some of these seniors would actually take me to Cape Coast Hospital. I remember a senior, Mate, and I remember it so well, because by the second term, my health was a little bit of an issue, and the headmaster, the great F.L. Bartels at that time, thought that I couldn't make it. So he actually called for my father and had a discussion, a serious discussion with my father.
Like you should be sent home?
Absolutely. He said, I'm suggesting that this, little boy should stay at home for 1 year and come back after the year. So this was my headmaster and my father conspiring against me. And so when I was informed by my father, I said, no way, I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue because, in 1960, there were actually 2 terms because the school year changed to September. So we're going to go into Form 2 in October. And so, they were concerned that I wouldn't make it. If I just continued and went into Form 2, second term, I'd been in hospital on and off and so on. So, these were legitimate concerns of these, grown-up people who cared about me. But I defied them, and I decided that I would go on to Form 2, And I remember telling this story to F.L. Bartels on his 98th birthday. He was visiting Ghana when he turned 98.
Wow.
And a number of, old school people had a lunch for him. And we were all supposed to say a few words. And my few words to him were just to remind him that I have the distinction of having defied him and my father. Him and my father.
Did he remember?
Of course he remembered.
Amazing memory.
He remembered because he also was, like I said, one of those people that really made an impact on me because, F.L. Bartels, not only did he speak English with, the Queen's English proper, but he would speak Fanti also very well. He was a cultured person in every sense of the word. And so it was just a delight, assembly, school assembly. He would be speaking his English and then he would break into some Fanti to explain something,
Yeah.
And he carried us with him in an impressive way. So to be able to defy such a person, my goodness. At 9, I was proud of that, and I was able to remind him about it when he was 98.
Oh my goodness! It's very interesting that how you entered secondary school at such a tiny age, and you're a tiny little thing. You got all this attention from the seniors and everything, and I think you carried that through university as well. Because you entered law school at 16.
I was 16. I was 16 when I went to Legon. And again, I had wonderful mentoring, People like Professor Fuswama, he wasn't a professor then, he was a senior lecturer then. But he sort of, for instance, took me under his wing. People like Kofi Deyanan, people like Dr. Thomas Mensah. And these were lecturers who, decided that they would sort of take me in hand and really give me access to their books. I could borrow from their library at home or in their office because I was curious. I was eager to learn. I was eager to read about all these cases and to analyze them and to engage in debates about them and so on. And I think once they saw that keenness, they were very happy
with it.
To take me on. And
no, I'm just bringing it up, because I'm looking at you now. And this is telling me a story that as early as childhood, really, you seem to have a fascination for role models. Small boy, you have just started kindergarten, and you're looking at how your teachers. That's weird, man.
Well,
what is it about it? It must have something to do with your upbringing.
That is true. My parents, I suspect that my father would have been a better lawyer than I am.
What did he do?
My father worked for the UAC.
Okay.
He became a textile sales manager for UAC. And he was somebody who took education so seriously and wanted us, his children, to make the best of education. He and my mother made every sacrifice for us to take our schooling seriously. My mother was our home teacher from when we were young. She had been a pupil teacher herself. She gave up her, ambitions for further education and so on.
To stay home.
And
teach her children.
And teach us and also look after the home. My mother was, an extraordinary. She's alive still by God's grace. She's 95, going on to 96.
Wow, show us some love, man. Wow.
And I mean, I think that she has been the real sort of anchor, especially since, my father died, and
how old were you when you lost your father?
My father died in 1981, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, by then I'd come back from, my postgraduate studies and so on, and I was teaching in Legon.
Okay. No, we'll get there, but I just have to bring this up because, when we see who you are now I'm beginning to understand, First was the upbringing at home and made important to you people who had certain moral standards, some kind of standards, as early as...
moral standards, and also, I mean, people, who had striven to, get somewhere. For instance, my uncle, who really, I guess, was the person who fascinated me into law.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, Justice Apalu.
Justice Apalu is your uncle?
Yes, my uncle. He's actually my mother's first cousin, but they were like brother and sister because my mother was born in Lagos, where her mother had been a trader and so on. But my mother, was then brought to live with her aunt by her own mother. And her aunt, that is my uncle's, mother, took her as her own daughter. And so the two of them grew up thinking that they were actually brother and sister. And so there was always a closeness between them.
Okay.
And so when we got to know that my uncle had come back from doing law in England and he started practicing and we started interacting with him, his family and so on, that was the initial fascination about law, and, I'm talking about when I was 5, 6, 7.
Wow.
In that
It's
time.
getting great. Let's hold it right there because we have now got to where your fascination about law started.
Yes.
So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, more of talking and chatting. We'll be right back.
Hey, Bukuya.
The thing all the pressure to me sister, o tun ka frame kwa me kin say bibi pon ya na sa o yare ko. Be say the woni ajo ho a o to ha wusu ni.
Ma nya osanka obetu mi ka ba.
Ma.
We yare na menya anu aduro. Nti na ma me to nkra fra o se bra no.
E na be say fe ni agba. Say wa ma me ye ma hye me.
Ko fichira. Wa ya se na ya na ye o ya me. Ena se wukunu so ba wo ho na wudwane gana no. Ana makoti e probin kan ye fra no Araba Basin tablets. So wonim se me de rehia banana. Nunti na nam so amakoto se duru dua bra say je nanom
Araba Basin betima ye wenyina ma me ene mi huri soft
wonyem wo ye obata ya wo ma wo ba nufuo ana akwada wo ni mfie dumienu a wo nka ho Araba Basin.
And there I see.
Do you know that in Ghana an average 70 cars are snatched every quarter?
Hello, babe. What? Your car snatched? Don't worry, Jetty K GPS got us covered.
Vehicle GPS tracker technology can provide information on the exact location of your vehicle at all times on your phone. Count on Jetty K for all your security needs: CCTV, biometric attendance and access control, home and vehicle alarms, electric fence. Talk to us on 0244 211 691 or 0208 800 115. Jetty K Security. Be security smart.
the occasion. With ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.
The KSM Show.
We're back. We're back, and yes, the show continues. We are chatting with Tsatsu. Before I put him in the box, we have to chat, man. But we took a break just when we were getting into your whole interest, how it began, and I'm thinking. So you are from originally Qatar, eh?
I was born in Qatar.
You were born in Qatar,
yeah, I was
okay.
born in Qatar, and again, my mother tells wonderful stories about all the neighbors and the people in the area at the time, because that's where she was staying whilst my father was of course working outside. So I was born in Qatar, but very soon we came to live in Accra.
Okay.
Because my father was working with UAC, and so he came to live in Accra.
Okay.
And by around that time also, as I was explaining, 5, 6, 7, my uncle had also just come back from England.
Okay.
As a full-blown lawyer,
So what was it that was fascinating you about your uncle as a lawyer? What do you remember particular triggers that caught your attention?
I wouldn't say there were particular triggers, but I think that just the way he carried himself, as a respectable, gentleman. And, the idea of, even though in those days I didn't know about people calling them learned friends and all that, but, he looked learned. Learned person. As I said, he had such a close rapport with my mother initially, and then also with my father, because my father became a very close confidant of his throughout the years, not only when he was in legal practice, but when he became a judge and became Chief Justice and all that. So in many ways, in the long run, my father probably had a closer relationship with him than even my mother did. And that's why I say that my father himself would probably have been a lawyer if he'd had the opportunity in his career, because he also had that kind of, interest in legal things, in learning, and in inculcating the need for learning in his children. So I think all those sort of elements came together, not in the sense of any specific triggers, but just the whole
package.
It's like, I remember, for instance, going into the chambers which my uncle worked from, Omega House at Dabraka. I remember going there and seeing how clients would be waiting to come and see him, and so on. So from that
all
age,
of those things exciting.
Exactly. All of that makes just an impression on a little boy, And so by the time I did my scholarship interview for a UAC scholarship to go to Fansipim, I was already telling the interviewers that my aim was to be a lawyer and ultimately to be a judge.
That was your aim.
And I think those UAC interviewers, they really were a little bit startled by this little 8-year-old boy. I think I turned 9 just before that interview in December 1959. Were you born there?
Oh yeah. What do you know? Yeah. 56.
So that's what I told them. Those were my ambitions, And so when about 10 years later, I'd gone to the law faculty and, I'd done well enough to get a University of Ghana scholarship to go and study in Oxford, the UAC people felt that they needed to celebrate that.
So we knew it. We said it long ago.
Exactly. So they actually had a cover of their in-house magazine.
Yeah, the Unicorn magazine.
Exactly. They had a cover which had my picture.
Yes.
And my picture was actually taken from something in Graphic, because Graphic published the fact that I got the first class at 18. I think graphic even gave a wrong age at that time, which my father promptly corrected. But anyway, so that made a unicorn front page as well. So, you know, I made 2 front pages, you know, graphic and unicorn.
Just thinking about this, at that age you wanted to be a lawyer, and you have turned out to be, Americans will say, a damn good lawyer, man. Show some love, man. but you had mentioned judge too. You didn't become a judge.
No, I didn't, and I'm quite glad I didn't become a judge for the simple reason that I've actually moved in a number of directions, sort of not strictly in legal practice, but for instance in oil and gas. You know,
I was going to get to that.
I've done a lot of work in oil and gas. We started off from the law angle, but it became a broader oil and gas industry international experience. And frankly, that has been the passion of my life in the last, 30, 40 years. And it's been a passion. It's still connected with the law, and I still get a chance to do law things, in practice, as you know.
The whole legal framework for the oil and gas thing.
Right. I had a bit to do with that, in the 80s.
You're very humble. You have a bit to do with that.
In the 80s. and I think that direction, sort of slightly away from the law, but always having an ability to get back into it, that actually has been more exciting to me. And frankly, judges have a tough job, so I don't envy I don't envy them at all. No. I think the oil and gas and occasional.
So when that talk came, and you're getting deeper and deeper into oil and gas, the legal framework, oil exploration internationally, all that era, were you missing courtroom?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, I was more of an academic lawyer to start with.
Okay.
My initial objective after my boasting about wanting to be a lawyer and a judge to the UAC people to impress them, my initial focus was actually to be an academic lawyer. So when I went to Legon, that was the sort of direction also that my mentors were pointing me in, because after I got my degree, I was sent to Oxford, and K.O. Fusama actually took me literally by the hand. And, we went together, we traveled together. He took me to London first, and at that time, Dr. Mensah, who had been Dean of the Law Faculty but had moved to the International Maritime Organization, was in London. So again, we went to his place before we went to Oxford, and I settled into Oxford. By then I turned 19, and I got into the Oxford scenario as well.
Pardon my interjection, but I read someplace or heard someplace that at Oxford, during an exam or paper, you questioned, they had given you an exam and you questioned the basis. Tell me about it. I thought it was very...
When you're that little, you can also be a bit daring, And indeed, there was an occasion when I thought that something about the question, was not exactly what it should be. And the examiner, whom I called attention to...
So you went to the examiner, or you called the examiner?
Because the examiners were around in the exam room. And they acknowledged that...
So you told them that the question was wrong? Answer me. Show some love, man.
They acknowledged that there was, a point in what I was making, and I should go ahead on the basis that I had pointed out to them. So I went ahead on that basis, and, by God's grace, I got a first in Oxford as well.
Oh my goodness!
But you see, again, I have to emphasize something.
Yeah.
In all this, it's not by anything of my own making. I mean, whatever talents I have, first of all, thanks to the Almighty. But also, people, I've mentioned Opuswama, Mr. Opuswama at that time, later Professor Opuswama. But at that time, Professor Kwapong, who was Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Legon, he had come into an arrangement with Oxford University whereby there was a linkage between the law faculty and Oxford University. So in my final year, Professor Simpson came from Oxford. He became the dean of the law faculty, and that's how I got into Oxford. Now, not only that, but the person who was the chairman of the law faculty in Oxford, with whom Professor Kwapong had made that arrangement, that sort of combination between Legon and Oxford, was my tutor at Wadham College. So I had somebody who had an interest in me, not just as one of the regular students, but because of the relationship that Professor Kwapong had created between Legon and the Oxford faculty. He took an interest in developing that. That's how come later, you know, my brother Fui and other people, Kwamna Hoy and so on, also went to Oxford under the same arrangement. You know, I guess if I hadn't managed to keep it going, nobody else would have been allowed to follow. But it just tells you that, you know, a lot depends on factors that are not to do with your own making, but other people, you know, make a way for you. Other people create an environment, create a context within which you can thrive. And that's really my story as far as I can see it. I mean, these other people, I mean, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, somebody like Kofi Dayanan, who himself had been to Oxford and who was teaching in the law faculty. I mean, these were people who prepared me, as it were, so that even though I went there so young, and that was my first time of being outside Ghana, really, I settled in, and I wasn't intimidated, you know, whether culturally or intellectually, you know, because, I mean, if you come from a university with Professor Kwapong as Vice Chancellor, do you think you will be intimidated by anybody from Oxford or Cambridge? He had been there and he had done better than all the people there. So you get encouragement.
That tells me about the quality of education at one time, and we'll get to that. But
maybe we still have it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but for now, for the youth there that are listening, you young ones growing, painful. You young ones growing, I want you to listen to something here, you know, the importance of mentorship. You cannot disregard it. So please, Tsatsu, if you can kindly just, you know, this one direct, not to me, you're telling the youth of Ghana how important it is to identify mentors in life. What is it that they should look for in the mentor? And what, like, because I'm listening to you, and from the earliest times that I can see, you had people that you admired and modeled your life, you know. And it's not happening too much these days.
Well, you know, I think the first point is from the point of view of yourself as a student, as a young person, as a child or whatever. I mean, you must have an aspiration that you link up with older people. You must look up to older people. You know, I think sometimes young people can be a little bit, you know, sort of the view that, you know, we can do it by ourselves. You know, we can, you know, we too have the, I mean, I don't know the word to use, but it's almost like they feel they can sort of, you know, work their way through their own capabilities or something. Frankly, I have never thought in terms of my own capabilities, because I've always recognized that whatever those capabilities are requires shaping. You know, it requires shaping. It requires not only mentoring in a direct one-on-one sense, but it requires the creation of a framework for you to thrive. You know, a framework, like I was saying, the framework of Accra Newtown Experimental School with a headmaster like that, the framework of Mfanspim School with a headmaster like that, and teachers like that, that kind of framework is very important. So when you have the opportunity in that framework then you start relating yourself to individuals who also begin to show an interest in you because you are showing an interest in the work that they're giving you. You start making sure that you live up to whatever expectation they set for you. You know, when I went to the law faculty, for instance, as I said, I was interested in borrowing books from all these lecturers because, you know, when I was reading, you know, from those books, I would then go back to the people who lent me the books and have a dialogue with them. You know, so once you show an interest, then people can reciprocate in paying attention to you. And in the same way, of course, when I was a lecturer in Legon, there were people that I also took in hand because I saw them having an interest and I needed to encourage that. You know, so I think it's very important for us all as young people. I'm still a young man, by the way.
Yeah, show some love, man.
For us all, you know, to see to what extent we can derive value. You know, let me tell you something very important. In my legal practice today, when I have the occasion to do a court case, a lot of work gets done for me by young lawyers. They are not seen, they are not out there, you know, but a lot of work. There's a network of people that I know I can count on for doing research, for actually engaging in arguments with me. And of course, best of all, I have 3 other siblings who are lawyers. So being able to engage in a constant dialogue and so on, you know, it sort of agitates your mind, and you can't be complacent, you know. So when you're developing an argument and you have, you know, your youngest brother, you know, tear it to bits, even before you have brought it out, you know, in public, then you can be sure that you shape that argument better. And I think that goes beyond the point about the mentoring, you see, because I'm saying that in any professional context, you should also gain the benefit of a network that is not just a network of, you know, people, praise singers or people who just lap up whatever you say, but people who are prepared to take you on. So, you know, I mean, it's reciprocal. You mentor some people, but in the end, they can begin to question you, to begin to take you on, to make sure that you sharpen, you know, your perspective. Iron sharpeneth iron. You know? And you know, I don't have their permission, but I would have wished to name some of these young people, even in some of the recent arguments I've been doing in court. I mean, they provide me a lot of the material that I'm using. I can't by myself, you know, generate all that stuff. It's humanly impossible.
And what I'm saying now is also in sync with somebody else told me. I think he worked at GMPC when you were there, and he said you used to actually give the younger ones there a chance to excel. You actually challenge them to make presentations. So this is in sync with what you're telling me.
Absolutely. You know, one of my joys when I was head of GMPC was we had these really sharp young people, geoscience, you know, geophysics, geology, you know, economics, you know, finance, all these sharp guys, and engineering and so on. And we'd go to these meetings with all these big companies, you know, big names, you know, Amoco, you know, Arco, BP, this and that. And these guys I was working with were probably in their late 20s, you know, early 30s or so. I wasn't much older, but I was the head. And I would just sit back and have them make the presentation because I'm no geologist, they are the geologists. And they would blow the minds of these international companies. And I would sit back and enjoy it. And for me, that was really one of the defining features of what we tried to do with GMPC. As a national institution, we wanted to make sure that we had a caliber of people who knew more about Ghana's geology as far as oil and gas is concerned than anybody else in the world. So when they go to a presentation, no matter what the company they are talking to is, they stand out and people can literally applaud them. And that's what needs to happen.
Wow.
And I'm glad to say some of them subsequently have become top ranking management
and
people.
this guy will, I won't mention his name, but he won't stop talking about you. But how you used to actually give them the chance to actually make presentations at levels that they would not even have dreamt of.
Right.
Wow.
Well, the truth is, I couldn't have made those presentations.
So you let them go.
So, I mean, all this finance stuff and so on. I mean, there were some really sharp people. I mean, I'm excited about the potential of this country in terms of human resources. That's been my excitement from the time I was teaching in Legon and so on, even before teaching, and it remains my excitement. And I don't know how we harness all that to be more productive than we currently are, but that's another story.
That's another story. Do you have a problem where, and sometimes, because when I talk to the younger ones about finding mentors and doing all the kinds of things you're saying, they're like, guess they don't even mind us. Have we got to the point where people who are supposed to be in positions who will mentor younger ones are not there, or they don't care as much, or because that's what they complain, KSM. And so they tell me, KSM, you know how long I've been trying to reach you? It's like, have things changed? Do we still have?
I'm not clear in my own mind what the issues really are at the moment. I don't know whether we are overwhelmed by the fact that we're having to churn out so many people through the system, whether it's in the law faculty, the whole university context. I mean, when I was in Legon, there were 3,000 students. Now we have, 20-something thousand?
Yeah.
I mean, and the pressures on lecturers and so on and so forth. So I don't really understand the full story about where things stand now. But what is also clear to me is that if you have an educational system in which, quantity is more important than quality, you really have a problem because, quantity is important because you have a population and you must educate and so on. But if you're not ensuring that in terms of the availability of teaching personnel, teaching, aids and so on, science laboratories for the, computers, there are people in Ghana who studied computer science, and much of that study, they never saw a proper computer, So I think we've got to address these issues about human development as what our education is about. It's not just about going from class to class in school, but it's about the human development and the human factor. And I don't have the answers. I'm not really an educationist myself. I used to be a lecturer once upon a time, but I think we've got to look at these things in a really comprehensive perspective and try to ensure that it's not just about running a whole host of people through the system year after year. I mean, you hear some horrific stories in the law school. Exams and so many people failing and so on. And it doesn't sit very well with some of us. It means something is wrong. I mean,
something is, because it's starting to connect to what they are complaining about, that people don't have time, people don't seem to. Now I'm starting to connect that the numbers have grown so much that it is very difficult to get that kind of attention now from anyone.
Yeah, but we saw that happening over time. And arrangements should have been made to ensure that the growth of the numbers was also, in sync with the growth of teaching personnel, facilities, proper lectures, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's possible to have large numbers and still have, like, I mean, you remember in Legon in those days, N block, you know, we had lecture room, large numbers of people. But from what I gather, now it's completely out of hand. And that's an issue that I guess our educationists, you know, should confront. And I believe that in the law faculty, for instance, recently, the dean of the law faculty, you know, invited some of us who had taught from the past just to have a dialogue about how, you know, the current situation in the law faculty could be shaped by us reflecting based on our experience in the past and how it could be applied to. So I think there is some effort being put into.
Show some love, man. Oh, man. Now we're going to take one last break and go into the third phase of our interview. And because you drove us into oil and gas, something else happened while we were in oil and gas that I think we should touch on. Because that was the time that our great Tsatsu, they said, Charlie, you have caused financial loss, man. And you have done things. And you were sent to court and you were sent to jail. And that was a very, 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 very critical part of your whole life experience, the things you learned. But I think I should shut up because when we come back, let's delve into that. Let's hear a little bit about that. Let's have a chat with Tsatsu. We'll continue with our chat after this break. We'll be right back.
Hey, Bukuya. The thing all the pressure to me sister. O ton ka frem kwa me you say bibi pon ya na sa o yare mpo. Be say the when ya jo ho a o to ha wusu ni.
Ma nya osan ka betu mi ka ba.
Ama.
We yare na me nya anu aduro. Nti na ma me ton kra fra o se bra no.
E na be bi se fe ni ya gba. Kwese wa ma me ye ma hye me.
Ko fichira. Wa ya se na ya na ye o ya mo. And as a wookunu so ba wo na wo dwane dwane no. Na makoti e probing kan ye fra no araba basin tablets. So wonim se me de rehia banana. Enu nti na nam so amakoto se duro edi abra o se je. Nanom
araba basin betima ye we nyina ma me. Ene me huri soft.
Wonyem, wo ye obatan ya wo ma wo ba nufuo. Ana akwada wo ni mfie dumienu a wo nka ho. Araba basin.
And there I see.
Do you know that in Ghana, an average 70 cars are snatched every quarter?
Hello, babe. What? Your car snatched? Don't worry, Jetty K GPS got us covered.
Vehicle GPS tracker technology can provide information on the exact location of your vehicle at all times on your phone. Count on Jatike for all your security needs: CCTV, biometric attendance and access control, home and vehicle alarms, electric fence. Talk to us on 0244 211 691 or 0208 800 115. Jatike Security. Be security smart.
Whatever the occasion, with ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.
The KSM Show.
Heading with Tsatsu, and we're going into some very interesting areas, Tsatsu, because you're talking about the GMPs we just talked about, legal framework, the many things you developed, and then something were blindsided by some strange accusations.
Well, I wasn't actually blindsided.
Oh, you were not blindsided.
Let me tell you why. You know, unfortunately, in the way this country works, I had been involved in GMPC under President Rawlings. And I was obviously seen as somebody that was close to President Rawlings. And a lot of credit obviously has to be given to his, interest at the time in developing GNPC and creating a new legal arrangement for oil and gas, because oil and gas previously was just part of mineral resources generally. Unfortunately, in the nature of this country, once a new government came, 2001, they wanted to throw overboard the things that he had been doing. And of course, I had headed GMPC during all that period, and I became a target. It's as simple as that. I became a direct target, and they had to find something. And the reason I say I wasn't blindsided is because, frankly, I could see from the beginning of 2001 the determination by hook or by crook to find something against me. I could see that. And that's what led to all these exciting legal cases also. The fast track court, I went to the Supreme Court. The fast track court was declared unconstitutional. And then they changed the panel. They added 2 more judges to the panel. They did a review. In those days, there were people criticizing the judges who made a decision in my favor. In fact, you should go and listen to what President Akufo-Addo, who was Attorney General at that time, you should see some of the things he said about the judges who gave a decision in my favor. But, there was a determination to overturn that decision. So, Justice Afre was appointed to the Supreme Court. And, another judge, Justice Lamte, was added to the panel. And so from a 5-4 in my favor, it became 6-5 against me. And then you remember the whole saga. I was taken to a series of courts. In one case, they withdrew it, then they took it to another case, it was thrown out, then they rearranged. There was a determination. So in the end, that's why I'm saying that in the end, they got what they wanted by having me on June 18, 2008, thrown into jail. And what is
causing
amazing?
Financial loss.
Yes, for causing financial loss. And the causing financial loss was in connection with a transaction that was introduced to GNPC by a bank, Merchant Bank, as our financial advisors, brought a project which involved also the International Finance Corporation, by the way, and we ended up as a corporate body getting involved in guaranteeing the company that was in that project. Now, it was a cocoa project, yes, and people say, what did cocoa have to do with oil? It's very simple. In fact, one of the reasons why Merchant Bank got us into that was because all the financing of oil imports of Ghana was based on foreign exchange from cocoa. And we were in a situation in 82, 83, where, cocoa production was declining in this country. And you had a project which was meant to reverse the tide. And we got involved based on advice from our bankers, from IFC and so on. We got involved in trying to get that project going. In the same way as, for instance, we also got involved, by the way, in creating EcoBank. EcoBank Ghana had investment from GMPC. EcoBank 25 years later is now the biggest bank by assets in Ghana. So, there were people who had all these perspectives, but we without trying to get into all the detail of those cases, I ended up on a day in court when the judge had not indicated that she was going to pronounce judgment. The trial wasn't done. There was a matter in the Supreme Court which had to be resolved the following week, the following Wednesday. The Supreme Court has set that day to decide on that matter, whether the IFC could be called as a witness in the case. And I go to court on it. The judge hadn't sat for 1.5 years. She kept postponing. Her clerk would postpone, and give us notice of it. And suddenly I go to court, and the judge says the day of judgment is here. And she ends up sending me to prison. And you know, I mean, I laugh about it because, frankly, when I look back, it is quite funny. You know, it's not so funny.
What was the level of shock, though? Because when you were entering the court, you didn't think they were going to pronounce judgment?
Absolutely. You know, I drove myself to court. I picked up my friend Martin Newman, and I drove him to court. So at the end of the day, I had to give him my car keys.
Because you're going to swim.
But wow. But you know, that morning, before I went to court, I told my wife, I'm just going to get a date because the case has been adjourned. So wow. And so we had this wonderful reading, you know, from Genesis, the book of Genesis. You know, we had, you know, the Garden of Eden and so on. So we had a lovely Bible reading before I left home that morning.
Wow.
And I said, within a couple of hours, when things were developing, my sister, who had heard of what was going on, had to call her and say, your husband is heading not for home, but he's heading for swamp. So, anyway, in the end, as I keep saying, by God's own orchestration, even that Insom experience for me was like another university experience because, you know, I learned things about the law that I didn't learn in Legon, but that I learned in Insom. Just from seeing how the law affects people, you know, ordinary
so this was like
people.
First-hand seeing.
Direct. You know, I had the benefit of all the legal advice. My colleague and friend and brother, Ivio Dankwa, was my lawyer. Roland Agbenoto was, you know, also my junior counsel. He had been my student before. He also was, you know, by then a very distinguished lawyer in practice. And he, you know, and these were people defending me at no cost to me. There were people who came to my aid. And I had all that benefit. But when I looked at the people that I was with in Insom in that period, those 5 months, I mean, there were people who should not have been. There was a juvenile, less than 16-year-old. He had been hauled into jail with his older brother because of some, I think, landlord and tenant matter, and they went and called the police on them and so. Anyway, I mean.
So these are the first time you're seeing this firsthand.
I mean, it was, well, let me say this. It wasn't the first time because, you know, in the 70s, I had also been involved in a number of human rights cases for people in prison. But you see, I didn't, what we did in those days was to try to bring forward, to try to bring up cases for them to be released without necessarily going into the details of their actual cases. So in that period, it was just, you know, what is called the habeas corpus that we did to try to get them out of jail. But when I was in prison in 2008, I was hearing from actual prisoners cases of why they ended up being there. And
what was the most horrendous you had? Or one of the most horrendous stories?
I mean, there were people who'd been in jail for 12 years without trial. That's completely unconstitutional. 12 years without trial. I mean, there was a young man I remember, I mean, again, caught up in something about drugs because he was managing director of a company whose vessel had been hired by the people who did whatever they did. But he himself obviously didn't know anything about what they hired his vessel, the vessel, you know, and he ended up being in prison for a long time. You know, there were so many of those things, you know. But I think for me, the most interesting aspect of those 5 months in prison can be summarized by what happened to me on the first Sunday when I was in prison at the United Church, where we go to worship. That was like the Protestant congregation. And I go to church there, and a pastor comes from Asamankasi, Pastor Jones. I now know him very well, Jones Owusu-Ejay. And he comes and he starts off by sort of acknowledging me, you know, as somebody he had heard about, and now, you know,
now face to face with this.
and then, but you see, before he preaches, a young lady comes to minister in song, and she gets up and she says, "You are in the right place at the right time." And I thought that meant something for me, because
wow.
When the pastor then preached, he preached the Joseph story, Genesis 50:20. Joseph saying to his brothers, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." And that was a message for me, because whatever evil was meant about my being there, God meant it for good. And in fact, that was the title of a reflection I wrote a year later concerning that experience of prison.
Wow.
You know, so, I mean, through that period of interacting with all these people and so on, it was a rich experience. It was a rich human experience. And that's why I say that it was like going to university again and seeing how the law actually works. Law in action. You know, I used to do a program on GBC called Law in Action. And I saw the law. I didn't catch that in my research.
You did Law in Action?
Yes, I did Law in Action.
So I mean, saw, look, all of you are too young to know this, but really?
I saw Law in Action, feely, as they say.
This was on a TV program. When you again. Wow.
And so that was one angle about it. Then there was another human angle about it. You know, the day that I ended up having to be taken out of the prison with an asthmatic attack.
And when you had the asthmatic,
yes.
I was going to ask you about that.
You know, the day before that, the Saturday, I was out on the Sunday. On the Saturday, one of the prisoners came to me and said that a prisoner has a bad asthma attack, and was there anything I could do to help with medication? By then, my wife had brought me some new medication, a new inhaler, a much stronger kind of medication than my normal Ventolin inhaler. As soon as this person came, I gave away that new inhaler.
The new one.
And by evening that day, I had my own situation, which was beyond the Ventolin inhaler. And the Ventolin inhaler couldn't do anything about it.
So, no, wait a minute. So the new inhaler that would have worked, that's what you gave away?
That's what I gave away, yes.
And then you got your
I got my attack. And again, by God's grace, by the morning, the situation clearly was dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have died. I mean, really, it's as simple as that. The director of that prison, may he rest in peace, he sadly passed away. He was feeling so helpless because they took me to Nsom Hospital. They couldn't manage the situation, and there had to be an evacuation to Kolebu or 37 or wherever. To cut a long story short, it was my wife who they allowed to organize an ambulance
from Accra,
from Koforidoa,
to come get
to come
to
Nsom, because there was no ambulance in the prison, no ambulance anywhere. And then first 37, and then at 37 they saw that their ICU could probably not handle the situation, so they moved me to Kolebu, the National Cardiothoracic Center. But the good news is that so I was able to have medical attention in the end. So thank God I'm still alive.
Yeah.
But that meant that that other prisoner was also saved. And can you believe it? 10 years from the day that I went to prison, we went with this Pastor Jones and a medical team to do a medical outreach. And a prisoner walks to me as, we're interacting. And he said, "Do you remember me? I'm the one who came for that inhaler."
Oh, to give to the...
To give to the person who had asthmatic attack. And he says to me, "You know what? That gentleman is always so grateful to you because his life was saved. He came out of prison. Now he's in Germany."
Oh, is it? Wow.
Now he's in Germany. And he can't stop recalling that inhaler thing.
That inhaler moment.
Yes. And
saved his life.
For me, that's why I'm saying that they may have meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Because when I look at that human experience that I had in that context, I can only thank God for taking me through even that. And I would like to believe that it was a process of refining whatever I had. And my wife and I look back on that because, again, that was not an experience that I went through just by myself. If it hadn't been for the support, you remember I told you that she wouldn't even have me eat food in the prison. She wanted me to eat home-cooked food and brought me food every single day. I mean,
so
that level,
every single day,
she came and she had her own job to do.
Yeah, so some love, man.
So, when I think about that, my siblings, the support that I received, my mother came to the prison. She was then past 80. She came to the prison. I mean, and I'm speechless because that's what energizes me. That is what gives me the assurance that, God is doing something beyond just my own human capabilities.
Yeah.
And I can only thank God. I can only feel.
And I saw some writings some things that you have written.
Yes.
Every anniversary, I saw one called.
The last one I wrote was the overflow of praise.
The overflow of praise.
And that overflow of praise. Actually, there's a passage that I should share with you. It's a passage that really sort of ministered to me, particularly in the period when I was writing that reflection 10 years on. And incidentally, that was when we did this outreach, when they reminded me that that inhaler worked. Psalm 63, a Psalm of David, in which, he expresses his thirst for God. But the particular translation that I saw around that time, which just ministered deeply to me, is called the Passion Translation. And let me just read you a few verses of Psalm 63 in the Passion Translation. It says, and this is David crying out to God, "I'm energized every time I enter your heavenly sanctuary to seek more of your power and drink in more of your glory. How I love and praise you, God. Daily, I will worship you passionately and with all my heart. My arms will wave to you like banners of praise. I overflow with praise when I come before you, for the anointing of your presence satisfies me like nothing else. You are such a rich banquet of pleasure to my soul. I lie awake each night thinking of you and reflecting on how you help me like a father. I sing through the night under your splendor shadow, offering up to you my songs of delight and joy. With passion, I pursue and cling to you. Because I feel your grip on my life, I keep my soul close to your heart. with the anointing of a king. I will dance and rejoice.
Wow. Wow.
Incidentally, the dancing part my wife does because my feet are not quite so coordinated.
There's times when in hospital with the attack, she would visit you and you had her sing a song, or she would sing a song
Absolutely.
over and over again.
You know, and in fact, the song that she would sing over and over was Danny Nette's song, I will worship you. I will lift up your name on high. You are Lord. Yes, you are. In those days, she had been singing it as part of our song group in church.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was Danny Nette's song.
Okay.
And it, again, when I was in prison, it used to ring in my ears. And so when I came out of prison, I was having a chat with one of our younger friends. And when I mentioned the song, he said, that's Danny Nette's song.
Wow.
So I said, who is Danny Nette? And so that also set me on a course to, we had to look for Danny Nette. And Danny Nette.
So you met him finally?
We met him. Danny Nette became our son. And, you know, it is sad that he went so early. But Danny Nette was somebody who gave us such joy with what God had anointed him with. And
it's interesting to hear you talk about such passion and reverence for God. And it's like, actually, I mean, this is not like, let's sit on the side that don't, it's like,
well, you know,
there's a relationship.
Yeah, I know that people often say, oh, but this man, he became a socialist. And so when he became a socialist, he was an atheist. Well, this is one socialist who never became an atheist.
Put your hands together.
And you know, and I mean, from Scripture Union and Infanspim. In fact,
you said at Scripture Union in Infanspim?
Yeah, I was in Scripture Union. And it was Miss Florence Yeboah, who was then Deputy Traveling Secretary of Scripture Union.
Wow.
To Nigel Sylvester, I think it was. And it was on one of her missions at Infanspim, that's when I really became a committed Christian, because of Florence Yeboah. So again, I'm telling you about people who make an impact that is for life. So that was when I was about 11. You know, 62, thereabouts.
Really?
I was about 11. And that carried me through. My parents were, of course, you know, Christians. They brought us up in a Christian home and so on. But in terms of my personal conviction, we're talking about from that period with Florence.
So you're around 11?
Yes.
When you developed that closeness?
Yes. And through university, you know, through Legon, when I was in the University Christian Fellowship as well, that's where I met and became so close with Professor Evio Dankwa, for instance. And again, some of the experiences of that period are just unforgettable. At that time, Mr. William Oforiatta had just come out of prison himself under the Nkrumah period. And he would come and speak to us at the University Christian Fellowship. And he would speak to us, we'd all be so excited at Pa Willie and so on. And for some reason, he took to me because I was, again, a little boy. Pa Willie, after coming to speak to us, University Christian Fellowship, above the bookshop in those days, he would actually come down and walk with me to my room in Legon Hall. Check it out. Big 6 Pa Willie, walking with this Chachichikata 17-year-old, you know, in Legon.
To your room?
To my room. In those days, my roommate was Duke Dankwa, his nephew. So that was an added reason for
Put your hands together, man. Really?
So, I mean, you know, that kind of impact also at that age was unforgettable. You know,
I hate to cut you because we are running out of time. But I spoke with some of your brothers, and I said, I want you guys. Just what do you think of your brother? Just send me some one-liner. So I want to read it to you. I spoke with Chidi Doche and then your cousin Kofi.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read what they sent to me, and I want to see whether you can guess who would have sent that. Yeah? So I'm starting with the first one that says this. He is the most easygoing and down-to-earth kind of person who, despite his level of knowledge and higher control over the English language, will never intimidate or overwhelm you in a conversation. He would always come down to your level and make you feel at home with yourself.
That's cool.
Show some love.
That's Kofi. That's Kofi.
That's Kofi. You're right.
Kofi, my nephew.
Let me read the second one and tell me who wrote it. Very, very simple. He says, a person of conviction, one who lives by his convictions almost to a fault. Who sent that?
Chidi.
That's Chidi. They all say things like this, you know, your conviction almost to a fault. And I just want to wrap up in the next few minutes because it was that conviction, even when you've gone through all the financial aid crisis and the whatever, and magnanimous ex-President Kufuor says, I'm pardoning you. You said, take that pardon. I didn't deserve this anyway.
You know, actually, I think I said it nicely.
Oh, you did. You did.
I wrote him a letter from my hospital bed.
Yeah.
And I just said that, you know, I would not accept his pardon. And I wouldn't accept it because by then I already had an appeal pending against the decision that had been taken. And I wanted to be, you know, vindicated.
Yeah, not pardoned.
Not pardoned.
You want to go through the process and be
when
vindicated.
you're pardoned, it means that the conviction still stands. But the penalty has been wiped away.
Okay.
And I really...
So it took you 8 years?
Yes, it took me 8 years.
To win the...
But in the end, the Court of Appeal decided unanimously in my favor and quashed the conviction 8 years later.
All right. All right. Now, just before we leave,
to the glory of God,
not to my. When you were in prison, I think one person that energized me and actually came to visit one day, you know, was when I met your wife Esther.
Absolutely.
And she picked up this whole crusade, free Tsatsu. You know, it was absolutely fantastic.
Yes,
if Esther is watching, do you have a word to tell her wherever she is, Esther?
I'll tell her privately.
Tell her privately. Show some love, man. Well, folks, man, this has been exciting coming to you from the Cactus Creek. Let's have a chat with Tsatsu. And the man has promised, so you heard it. He says he will come back after the verdict, and that time he will be it will be Tsatsu in the box.
Just make sure that it's a big enough box.
But really, thank you. I'm glad that your time was limited and everything, but you said you are committed to coming, so you are here.
I'm glad we had this chat. And you know, I have to say to you that you probably don't remember it, but there was a time that you and I were talking about something, and you quoted Ephesians at me about, you know, exceedingly abundantly and all that. And then I remember that we are Osofuba.
Okay, folks, man. Oh, man. What a great chat we have had with Tsatsu. And the whole Ghana is looking for the part 2 when we're going to have him in the box. Don't forget, this Friday, KSM show is on again. This time I have Zion Felix. Tune in. But until then, I'm so glad. All I can say for now is, what am I going to say? We are out of, let the whole world say, yeah.